Hey guys, this one's going out to any progressive hosts out there that are trying to convince the world, that are trying to shill against a thriving progressive humanity, that are trying to tell us that Tulsi Gabbard was one of the losers in the fourth debate. Because, well, I disagree. I think that shows like The Humanist Report and The Hill are throwing Tulsi under the bus because they've probably been told to, because they've been told that if they want to keep on the airwaves, they need to not rock the boat like she has. And you know what? I understand sometimes you got to do what you got to do to keep your job. There's a reason Bernie Sanders has stayed in Congress for 20 years. He has a horrible voting record on war. And you know, I don't really fault him for that too much. I'm not going to vote for him because there's someone else repping his policies that doesn't have that same horrible record and the beholdenness to the people who tell him to vote in that way. But I get it. You know, if you're going to be a 20-year congressman, you're not going to stay there by rocking the boat on endless wars. We look at what happened to Paul Wellstone. Yeah, you don't really get to stay in Congress standing up to those borks. I mean, when you think about it, when you think about all this vitriol and vile, offensive, venomous nonsense that Tulsi stands up against every single day, do you really think that she can make it as a 20-year congresswoman fighting up against that all day, every day? I mean, maybe. But, just saying, you gotta make some compromises if you want to stay in the game, and I understand why Byrne did that, because he wanted to get economic reform done, and he saw that as the only way to do that. So, you know what, that's that. But bottom line, I'm not here to talk about Bernie Sanders. I think that Bernie Sanders not talking about Tulsi Gabbard is pretty sick and messed up. I think the number of times he said, I'm the only person on that stage who's going to talk about this issue. Me and Liz are the only people on this stage repping Medicare for all, blah, blah, blah. It's like, Byrne, it's the progressive movement, and Liz ain't a progressive, and you know it. Why are you backing her up and not the other person on that stage that has your back, that is actually repping the progressive movement, that is getting people to talk about these issues that you wish you were allowed to bring up on the national stage? But anyway, I'm not here to talk about Bernie. I'm here to talk about Debate 4 coverage and how many people are actively trying to mislead and deny Americans the truth. The fact of the matter is, in all major upsets, revolutions, whatever you want to call them, there are a few steps. First they ignore you, then they smear you, then they fight you, and then we win. Right now we're somewhere in between the smearing and the fighting stage, and somehow they thought giving her more press was a good idea. Oh boy. But let's look at this last week of press coverage. 5 days before the debate, Tulsi says she's thinking about boycotting it, and immediately gets 1 million views on that video within a few hours. Twitter lights up and the entire Aloha wave suddenly becomes aware of just how many of us there are, and we have hope. People are in tears over the fact that we are actually winning a lot more than anyone realizes, because the algorithms keep us from realizing just how many people are in the Gabbard wave who are constantly fighting for this fight every single day. And, you know, the debate happens. Tulsi shows up, and she slays, exposes Warren, completely slays Buttigieg, exposes the DNC for the fake news that they are, baits out this Hillary comment that has made her the talk of the town for a whole weekend, and tries to call out Andrew Yang on his censorship, but of course, the CNN anchors do a really good job of, you know, corralling her and keeping her from doing that, just like they cut to commercial when she tried to expose Elizabeth Warren. But the people see that. You can say what you want about, well, it wasn't very effective because CNN didn't let them talk. I'm sorry. The people got the message. The people are running interference for Warren, and she doesn't have a foreign policy whatsoever, nor does she even have an M4A policy yet. It's pretty embarrassing, and quite frankly, the idea that you think you can put a person who's willing to lie about nonsense like needing to quit her job because being pregnant is and going to school is too much for her, and it's just not going to work out, and then changing it later to, I was fired because I was pregnant. I'm sorry, but like, that original story is just as compelling. It allows you to identify with voters, and it doesn't expose you as a person willing to lie about, you know, something that you have no real reason to be lying about. That tells us that you don't really value or think that lying is particularly dangerous or something that you need to give that much weight to. You're just willing to do it to, advance your campaign. And I'm sorry, but that combined with your corporatist background and willingness to, negotiate and bring people to the table and have a plan for that, but not actually discuss what your plan is, people aren't going to show up for Elizabeth Warren. Sorry. I'm not going to. And I know that there are plenty of people in America that fall in the same boat. We're not voting red or blue for anyone who's a corporatist. There's only one person. There are many, I would be willing to bet hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans who will show up for one candidate and only one candidate in 2020, and that is Tulsi Gabbard. Red or blue, she's the only one that people will show up for. There are people who love Bernie Sanders, who will by and large mostly vote for Tulsi Gabbard. There are a bunch of people in America who will never vote for Bernie Sanders, who have already decided how they feel about Bernie, and that's not going to change, unfortunately. A lot of those same people are willing to vote for Tulsi. She's got the most electability and the best policies. It seems like a no-brainer where we should be at in this campaign, and yet the Hillary Clinton-controlled media Borg wants to make sure that that doesn't happen. They would rather lose to Donald Trump and have 4 more years than give us a true humanity first candidate. That tells you all you need to know about DNC corruption. Let's try to stop them in 2020. Because you know what? I really, unfortunately, feel a little disempowered on this one. I believe that when it comes right down to it, unless we can pull 51% to one candidate, they get to bring in their superdelegates and make the choice for us. I know that they're going to rig shit. That's just the way, that is where we're at. That's the way it is. We need to make sure that they can't. If the votes are decisive, they can't do anything. If it's clear that if they choose something else, that they're going to be exposed and that there's no way that they will ever be able to do the same tricks that they do now because humanity is not going to fall for their nonsense anymore, they won't have much choice. Saying that she lost that 4th debate is ridiculous, guys. Let's be honest. I mean, Buttigieg is, pulling away some of her veteran votes and threatening as a 12-year intelligence asset the intelligence officer who believes in our WMD intel and shit. Sorry, but no, he had to go. And he was starting to gain some momentum in the Midwest, which is where we need to be winning. So taking him out, exposing Warren for not having a foreign policy, and trying to expose Andrew Yang for wanting to reunify the press and going with big tech and censorship, having 169 policies without once talking about people peddlers, kid herders, and being silent on censorship in all 169 policies. Additionally, the censorship that enables the most vile and horrible deeds on this planet. I mean, it's one thing that he might have overlooked that detail, potentially, as someone who works with the big tech companies. I find it hard to believe that he just happened to overlook the fact that, oh yeah, censorship, that is something I should talk about, huh? No, I'm sorry, he's talked about big tech more times than I can count in all his various speeches that I've watched, and he'll talk about how we need to make us shareholders of our data and cooperate with China on AI, which, if you know what AI authoritarian censor state China does with their AI, they're gonna rule the world with that AI someday, and that AI says that you can't question authority, that you can't misbehave, that you can't have a poor opinion of your government, because if you do, your social credit score goes down, and if your social credit score goes down, you can't hang out with other people that have high social score, or their score goes down. And if your score drops below a certain point, your kid gets pulled from school, your cards no longer work, and you can't travel. If you say anything online, your score might go down and your stuff will be taken down. You might even get your internet access revoked. So, if that's the world that China's trying to propagate with AI, why should we cooperate with China on AI? Why should we tax our CO2 in order to try to make global warming better, when what taxing our CO2 is going to do is make production more expensive in this country, so more goods will be produced in countries that don't have environmental regulation, that pollute a lot more, and that use slave labor. So if we want to combat global warming and have more people not be taken advantage of, not taxing our CO2 and saying we need to get rid of these tariffs that are destroying Chinese jobs, that's nonsense. I'm sorry, but that is nonsense. Anyway, I think it's very clear to me who won the fourth debate. The media has been buzzing about no one else. I mean, sure, they'll try to tell you that she's only polling at 1% and we don't talk about her very much, but bottom line is Twitter, Facebook, and the American people have been on fire about Tulsi for 8 days now. Since she said she was going to boycott the debate, since going to the debate and calling out CNN for calling her a Russian asset earlier that day on live television on the channel the debates are hosted. Yeah, fair and transparent, I'm sure. And she baited out this Hillary Clinton thing that has just cracked it all wide open. I mean, at this point, 10/18/2019 is going to be a day for the history books. That is the day. That is our modern era Rosa Parks moment, where those big, bad, evil people with more money and power than gods were stood up to by our best president that America has ever seen. She also happens to be our first female combat veteran of color president, multi-spiritual Hindu of president, but you don't need to have any of those adjectives. She's the best president America has ever seen. And as long as they don't kill her between now and 2024, there's nothing they can do to stop her from ascending to that highest office in the land. All they can do is try to stand in the way and delay the inevitable of this boulder that is rolling down the hill. And yeah, they're gonna try. They're gonna keep trying and trying. But that's all they can do. And it's really amazing to live in a world, to live on a timeline, to see into a future that has hope, that truly has a pretty decent chance of humanity winning and thriving. We might have to put up with 4 more years. It's pretty dumb because we should have had it in 2020, but they're gonna have to kill Major Tulsi Gabbard if they don't want her to be president by 2024. I don't think they'll be able to stop her in 2020, honestly. I think that it's going to require some serious shark jumping at this point after Hillary's garbage fire that she lit. I mean, seriously, that is probably the most patriotic thing that Hillary Clinton has ever done, was to call our 16-year combat medic veteran congresswoman a Russian asset. Seriously, she gave us back our country with that one. She forced every single media organization to talk about Tulsi, and every single American to get lit up and super stoked about Tulsi, because let's be honest, no, most people don't want to talk about politics. They see that it's still Joe Biden, that put their head down and they go, oh my gosh, I can't handle that shit. And you can say, there's this awesome candidate, have you heard? And they're going to go, oh, I don't do politics. But when you give someone a headline like this, headlines like these, this week has been insane. There have been 3 or 4 viral, incredibly millions of people exploding, powerful messages firing out through the infospheres about Tulsi. And her biggest hurdle in this campaign is that people don't know who she is. People who do, anyone who actually knows what Tulsi is really repping, they never leave. People don't leave the Aloha Wave because there's no other candidate that reps many of the issues that she does. Every other candidate is remaining conspicuously silent on some of these very important world affairs. And the smears are baseless. I mean, the only thing that actually has any sort of substance is the fact that Tulsi used to be a member of the CFR, and ooh, you should be afraid, CFR, ooh. And granted, yes, the CFR is the recruitment ground for future presidents and a lot of spy agencies and all that stuff. But at the same time, she got kicked out of the CFR after 1 term because she stood up to the DNC and got blackballed out of everything. She's dealing with so many smears from those CFR members that if she makes it to the top of Crap Smear Mountain, she won't owe them nothing. And on the bright side, since she was there for a few years, she has intel on how these evil, crooked mother effers work. So I don't necessarily see it as all that bad of a thing. I mean, when you listen to the woman talk, when you look at what she's repping, when you look at what she's willing to call out, and who is smearing her and thumping her over it, it's very clear to me that she's not going to be beholden to anyone except the planet. Water is life, no more wars. With that, thanks for tuning in to Gabbin' Hello America, fellas. Don't let them skeptical Skeksis steal your essence, and here's where we separate the wheat from the chaff. The boys from the men, the people who stand for a future thriving humanity, and the people who shill against it. And you can be a subtle shill. You don't actively propagate the smears, but you do say, I like Tulsi Gabbard, but here now I'm going to tell you all the things I don't like about Tulsi Gabbard. You might just be that guy. And, you know that if you expose your bias too much, you're going to lose fans, so you don't do it blatantly, but at the same time, you clearly are standing against a future thriving humanity, and I see no reason why you would do that other than to keep your business going. So, here's where we separate the brave, the people who are fighting, from the people who fight against. And we know what the stakes are. Keep fighting, Aloha Wave. Keep it real.